Hand of Retribution by K.L. Bedwell, published by Red Shirt Publications, 2022. Brianna Hathard wants nothing more than any other college freshman: independence, a touch of adulthood, to be away from her small hometown. And for a brief moment she achieves that goal, until she receives word of a home invasion that has yielded a horrifying outcome. Thrust back into Colton, Pennsylvania, the town she thought she had left forever, Bree finds her family in shambles. Determined to find answers, she gets stonewalled in every attempt by local law enforcement and townspeople. With seemingly nowhere to turn, she prays for justice in a most heartfelt plea for at least one person to see her heartache and intervene. Soon after Bree's cry for help, mysterious supernatural deaths begin plaguing Colton. As she musters the energy to continue her fight for answers, suspicion over those mysterious deaths is cast her way. Only when a stranger reaches out to Bree does she learn the most inconceivable revelation about the happenings in her hometown and the price of answered prayers. To be honest, I don't remember what it was about this book's description that drew me in. I have a habit of adding something to my TBR pile and letting it sit long enough for me to forget the premise of the book. That way, I go into the story as blind as possible. This was the case with The Hand of Retribution. I didn't remember anything about the description, and I didn't bother refreshing myself on it when I started this book. I've been asked a few times why I don't mention trigger warnings. Well, I do when I feel they're warranted. Check out my review of Girl of Dust and Smoke by Halo Scott. Incidentally, one of my favorite reads of 2022. As far as every single trigger warning for every book, I read horror and dark fantasy. We all know what we're getting into here. With that being said, Hand of Retribution should carry a trigger warning for rape at the very least. Just know that going into it. The book starts out with a cryptic prologue scene that gets explained further later in the book, followed by Chapter 1, showing us a carefree main character Bree as she arrives at college. She is excited and thrilled to finally be leaving her small town behind. Then, Chapter 2 happens. That's our trigger warning already. After that, the book goes on a roller coaster of fast and slow on a mystery thriller plot that just goes deeper with the supernatural the closer you get to the end of the book. There is a family murder and attack that summons Bree back home to her hated one-horse town, only to find out there have been no arrests and no leads as to who may have done this. With nowhere else to turn, Bree goes to the local church and prays for justice for her family. What follows is a story of supernatural mystery with a theme of be careful what you wish for. The small town gets hit with a rash of mysterious deaths, one by one. Deaths that Bree always seems to dream or get flashed visions of beforehand. The rest of the story follows Bree as she struggles with this along with everything else family related on her plate. This is a multiple POV story, so we get to see the insight into various perpetrators, side characters, and such as the story unfolds. You would think that would give away too much insight into the whodunit part of the story, but not even close. Well, it does as far as who the family attackers are, but as a reader you kinda need to know who's who for the way this story unfolds. If you haven't guessed it by now from what I've said along with the title of the story, this is a good old revenge story scenario. There's a pretty decent body count with this story, and they build up slowly. The first two are kinda The third one gets a little more graphic, and after that, all bets are off. You know for sure, if you hadn't picked up on it yet, that something's behind all of these deaths, and it's definitely supernatural. Character-wise, this story is mostly young adult characters, but there is a good mix of adult characters and their POV as well. But trust me, the story and events themselves are not young adult. As long as you take the previously mentioned trigger warning into consideration, this book has enough to satisfy supernatural thriller fans and horror fans alike, and even mystery fans because it takes forever to start hinting at where the revenge aspect is coming from. This story got me begging to know that about halfway through. For the cons, let's see. One of the reoccurring things that jumped out at me is there's one character, the police chief, that gets described as runs his tongue over his teeth. I had a hard time picturing that. I even found myself acting it out in various ways to try and gauge what expression or emotion the writer was trying to convey. And before you accuse me of being petty, it happens with this character a lot. And I mean a lot. You'd be a fool to turn that into a drinking game. The writer does get pretty descriptive with some of the scenes, and you can tell the thesaurus is always within arm's reach. That's not a bad thing, and some readers absolutely love that. I'm just being nitpicky now. The ending took a turn I didn't fully see coming. It gives us closure with everything and all, but the very last chapter, I'm mixed on that one. It's an interesting take, but it wasn't a direction that I would have taken it at all. It doesn't ruin the story, but I'm not convinced it accentuates the story either. It definitely answers the rest of the questions that the reader has, but I'm undecided if those questions needed answering, or if leaving it to our imagination would have been better. Either way, it was a good read, and I don't regret it at all. It's too early to see where this book will sit in a best of count of the year, but as of right now, I enjoyed it. It kept me coming back session after session to see what would unfold. I view it as a good start to a new reading year, and I can't wait to see what new stories we find. Until then, find yourself a good book and enjoy a break from reality.